Thank you. Minister or Parliamentary Secretary.
I ask leave of the House to move a motion to enable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to speak for 8 minutes.
I call the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as would prevent the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition speaking in reply to the Minister's statement for a period not exceeding 8 minutes.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour please say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. I call the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs for giving me the opportunity to respond to her statement. Of course, the opposition in this, as in all things related to MH17, supports the government. The opposition welcomes the tabling of the treaty between Australia and the Kingdom of the Netherlands on the presence of Australian personnel in the Netherlands for the purpose of responding to the downing of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. Madam Speaker, there are dates that stick with us. The years of war, the days of loss. September 11, 2001, or the 1st of October 2005, the Bali bombing. And now, July 17. Each of us can no doubt remember exactly where we were and what we were doing when we first heard news of the tragic downing of MH17 on the 17th of July this year. We know that 298 people on board lost their lives and that 38 of those victims called Australia home. Beyond the dates and the numbers, we've come to know the personal stories of many of those who are on MH17. Emma Bell, the teacher working in the Northern Territory community of Maningrida, where Aboriginal elders held a smoking ceremony last month to remember her. Gary and Mona Lee, who migrated to Australia in the 1970s. Sister Philomena Tiernan, a nun from Sydney, and Perth resident Nick Norris and his 3 grandchildren. Evie, Mo and Otis Maslin. Johannes van der Hende and his wife Shalisa Dua and their children Margot, Marnix and Piers. Researchers travelling to the 2014 AIDS conference in Melbourne, including the former president of the International AIDS Society, Job Langer. We know so many of the names, so many of the stories, and of course we know a little of the grief of the families. The Leader of the Opposition and I and many members of Parliament on both sides were pleased to join the Prime Minister, the Minister for Foreign Affairs and other members of the government for a very moving memorial service in Melbourne. We attended a memorial service in Sydney too. But right around Australia, families are grieving privately for the people that they've lost. Much of the past 2 months has been coming to terms with what we saw on that tragic day in July. We've seen, of course, the efforts that our investigators, part of an international effort, have made to bring to justice those responsible for this terrible crime. Unexpected, unjust and unjustifiable. Of course, the shooting down of an unarmed passenger jet in civilian airspace demands answers. And it also demands a reconnection of those grieving families with something of the people that they've lost. James and Vanessa Risk, who lost their parents, Albert and Marie, held a memorial service in early August with more than 1,000 mourners and were later able to hold a private family funeral for their parents. The family of Mary and Jerry Menke from Malakuta, who said, "We look forward to receiving Mary and Jerry again soon in the place and the community that they loved so much and which loved them." The work of returning the remains of those who lost their lives to Australia is phenomenally important for the families. Those last objects that their loved ones touched, the things that they were holding and handling on that flight home. The efforts of the international team have been helping families around the world both understand the source of this crime and have their loved ones returned to them. One of the pilots, Captain Eugene Chu Jing Leong was returned to his family for a funeral service in Malaysia. His friend, another pilot, Aslan Abu Bakar, described flying home from the Netherlands saying, "It was horrible bringing my very close friend. We used to fly together, and this time we fly together again, but in a different situation." And yet, as difficult as that journey was for that pilot, to be able to bring home the remains of his friends to rest in an urn in his family home and allow his family to grieve for him properly, to come and pay their respects, of course, is very important work. The mission that the Australian personnel and their international partners have carried out has been done with distinction in extremely challenging circumstances, including reports of a team spending 7 hours and at times avoiding arms fire to retrieve very small pieces of debris and a silver necklace. It is completely unacceptable that participants in this conflict on Ukrainian soil were not able to afford safe passage and security to the international team of experts working on the MH17 crash site. And of course, Russia must accept its share of responsibility for the ongoing instability in the Ukraine and must fully cooperate with efforts to understand the chain of events which led to this crash. Australia has been an international leader in the discussion about the investigation following the moving of Resolution 2166 in the UN Security Council. This is exactly the sort of use that we envisaged for Australia's representation on the Security Council when we argued so hard that a country of Australia's stature deserved its place on the Security Council. Given the seriousness of the tragedy and the urgency of the efforts by Australian personnel overseas, the treaty being tabled today forms an important part of our national response. The treaty was signed and entered into force on the 1st of August this year and acknowledges the responsibilities of Australian personnel, including to respect the sovereignty and the laws of the Netherlands. The treaty also affords our personnel rights and protections during their important work, including allowing them to carry weapons and wear field uniform. The arrangements provide that Australian personnel will remain under Australia's command and any necessary administrative or disciplinary action will be taken by Australia. The opposition notes that the government relied on the national interest exemption to take binding treaty action before the treaty was tabled in the Parliament. We accept that the time sensitivity of the situation at hand and the primacy of affording proper protection to Australian personnel from the Department of Defence and the Australian Federal Police have made this necessary. I welcome the tabling of this treaty and commend it to the Parliament.
Clark? Clark?